As graduation approached, a sense of restlessness began to stir within me, compelling me to seek adventure beyond the confines of typical tourist experiences. While many of my peers were content to celebrate their achievements with predictable trips to popular destinations, I felt an insatiable urge to explore the uncharted territories of the world. My motivations were rooted in a desire for authenticity and a yearning to connect with the deeper narratives that lay hidden beneath the surface of well-trodden paths. I craved experiences that would challenge my perceptions and immerse me in the raw beauty of nature, far removed from the crowded beaches and bustling city streets that seemed to dominate the travel landscape. In stark contrast to my intentions, many of my friends embraced a more reckless approach to post-graduation life. Their plans revolved around parties, social media-worthy escapades, and fleeting moments of thrill that often lacked substance. While I admired their carefree spirit, I couldn't shake the feeling that their pursuits were superficial, a mere distraction from the profound questions that lingered in my mind. I wanted to dive deeper, to uncover the stories of the places I visited and the people I encountered. This desire for meaningful exploration fueled my determination to embark on a journey that would lead me to the ocean's mysteries, a realm that had always captivated my imagination. With a backpack slung over my shoulder and a heart full of anticipation, I set off on my adventure, leaving behind the familiar comforts of home. My journey began along the rugged coastlines of the Pacific, where the roar of the waves and the salty breeze invigorated my spirit. Each destination was chosen not for its popularity, but for its potential to reveal the hidden wonders of the natural world. I sought out remote beaches, secluded coves, and local fishing villages, eager to engage with the environment and the stories it held. As I ventured further from the beaten path, I encountered the remnants of ancient cultures, whispered legends of mythical sea creatures, and the haunting beauty of untouched landscapes. This journey was not just about physical exploration, it was a quest for self-discovery. With every step, I felt the weight of my expectations lift, replaced by a sense of freedom and possibility. The ocean, with its vastness and depth, became a metaphor for the unknown adventures that awaited me. I was ready to embrace the mysteries that lay beneath the surface, to confront my fears, and to uncover the truths that would shape my understanding of both the world and myself. As I stood on the edge of the shore, gazing out at the horizon, I knew that this was just the beginning of a transformative journey into the heart of the ocean's secrets. As I stepped off the rickety bus that had carried me through the winding roads of rural Russia, I found myself in Sovetskaya Gavin, a small seaport town that seemed to exist on the fringes of time. The air was thick with the scent of salt and fish, mingling with the faint aroma of wood smoke from nearby homes. Sovetskaya Gavin, like many towns in post-Soviet Russia, bore the scars of economic upheaval. Once a bustling hub of trade and industry, it now struggled under the weight of uncertainty, its streets lined with crumbling buildings and faded signs of a bygone era. The transition from a centrally planned economy to a market-driven one had left many locals grappling with unemployment and dwindling resources. Yet there was a resilience in their spirit that intrigued me. As I wandered through the town, I was struck by the stark contrast between the beauty of the surrounding landscape and the palpable sense of hardship that lingered in the air. The locals, with their weathered faces and cautious smiles, were a tapestry of stories waiting to be uncovered. I approached a small group gathered near the docks, hoping to secure transport to the nearby islands that had long captured my imagination. Their conversations were animated, punctuated by laughter and the occasional glance in my direction, a foreigner in their midst. With a mix of broken Russian and gestures, I attempted to communicate my intentions, feeling both exhilarated and vulnerable in this unfamiliar environment. One elderly fisherman, his hands calloused from years of labor, took it upon himself to help me navigate the complexities of securing a boat. He spoke slowly, his words laced with a thick accent, and I could sense the warmth behind his gruff exterior. As he gestured toward a weather-beaten vessel bobbing gently in the harbor, I felt a surge of excitement mixed with trepidation. The boat, with its peeling paint and rusted edges, seemed to embody the spirit of adventure I sought, yet it also represented the uncertainty that lay ahead. In that moment, I realized that my journey was not just about reaching a destination. It was about embracing the unknown and forging connections with the people I encountered along the way. The locals, despite their struggles, welcomed me with a sense of camaraderie that transcended language barriers. As I prepared to board the boat, I felt a rush of adrenaline, a blend of anticipation and anxiety. The ocean stretched out before me, vast and mysterious, promising both challenges and discoveries. In Sky Gavin, I had found not only a gateway to adventure but also a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit in the face of uncertainty. The dimly lit bar in Sky Gavin was a hidden gem, nestled between weathered buildings that had seen better days. The air was thick with the scent of grilled fish and the faint aroma of vodka, mingling with the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses. Wooden beams crisscrossed the ceiling, and the walls were adorned with faded photographs of the town's maritime history. A few locals sat at the bar, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of hanging lanterns, sharing stories that echoed through the cozy space. It was here, amidst the warmth of camaraderie and the hum of conversation, that I first encountered Zaina, a traveler from Singapore. Zaina was an easygoing spirit, with an infectious smile and an adventurous glint in her eyes. She was seated at a corner table, her laptop open in front of her, but her attention was drawn to the lively atmosphere around her. As I approached, she looked up and greeted me with a friendly nod, inviting me to join her. We quickly struck up a conversation, sharing our respective journeys and the motivations that had led us to this remote corner of Russia. The initial awkwardness melted away as we exchanged stories of our travels, each tale revealing a piece of our personalities and aspirations. As the night wore on, the camaraderie between us deepened. We laughed over our misadventures, from getting lost in foreign cities to the peculiar foods we had dared to try. Zaina recounted her experiences navigating the bustling streets of Tokyo, her enthusiasm infectious as she described the vibrant culture and the breathtaking sights. I found myself captivated by her tales, feeling a sense of kinship with someone who shared my passion for exploration. In that intimate setting, surrounded by the warmth of the bar and the camaraderie of fellow travelers, I felt a sense of belonging that transcended the barriers of language and culture. It was during our conversation that Zaina revealed her plans to travel to Japan next, and I expressed my own desire to explore the islands. Sensing my eagerness, she offered to help facilitate my journey, sharing tips on transportation and must-see destinations. Her knowledge and enthusiasm were invaluable, and I felt a surge of gratitude for her willingness to assist me. With her guidance, I began to envision my next steps, the prospect of venturing into Japan's rich tapestry of history and culture becoming more tangible. As we clinked our glasses in a toast to new friendships and adventures, I realized that this encounter was more than just a chance meeting. It was a pivotal moment in my journey. Zaina had not only become a friend but also a bridge to the next chapter of my exploration, reminding me of the beauty of connection in the most unexpected places. In that bar in Sovetskaya Gavin, amidst the laughter and shared stories, I felt the thrill of adventure pulse through me, igniting a sense of possibility that would carry me forward into the unknown. Aboard the timber ship bound for Japan, I was immediately struck by the vessel's weathered condition. The wooden hull creaked underfoot, its surface worn smooth by years of exposure to the elements. Ropes hung loosely from the rigging, and the scent of salt and fresh timber filled the air, mingling with the faint aroma of engine oil. The ship, though aged, had a certain charm, embodying the spirit of adventure that beckoned me forward. As I stepped onto the deck, I was greeted by a lively crew, each member contributing to the ship's rhythm with their unique roles and personalities. The captain, a burly man named Dmitri, commanded respect with his booming voice and no-nonsense demeanor. His weathered face bore the marks of countless voyages, and his eyes sparkled with a mix of wisdom and mischief. He was a seasoned sailor, having spent decades navigating the unpredictable waters of the Pacific. Under his leadership, the crew operated like a well-oiled machine, each member knowing their responsibilities and executing them with precision. Dimitri's first mate, a wiry young man named Mikhail, was a bundle of energy, always darting around the deck, ensuring that everything was in order. His enthusiasm was infectious, and he often shared tales of past journeys, captivating the crew with stories of storms weathered and ports visited. As we set sail, the atmosphere aboard the ship was a blend of excitement and apprehension. The crew worked diligently, hoisting sails and securing cargo, while I stood at the bow, feeling the wind whip through my hair. The vast expanse of the ocean stretched out before us, a shimmering blue canvas that promised both beauty and danger. I could sense the challenges that lay ahead, the unpredictable weather, the potential for rough seas, and the isolation of life at sea. Yet, there was an undeniable thrill in the air, a shared understanding among the crew that we were embarking on a journey that would test our limits and forge bonds that could only be formed in the crucible of adventure. As the ship cut through the waves, I found myself drawn into the camaraderie of the crew. Evenings were spent gathered around a small table in the galley, sharing meals and laughter, swapping stories of our lives on land and the dreams that propelled us forward. The challenges of the journey ahead loomed large, but they were met with a sense of determination and resilience that permeated the ship. I realized that this experience was not just about reaching Japan. It was about embracing the journey itself, the trials and triumphs that would shape us along the way. With each passing day, I felt a growing sense of belonging among the crew, united by our shared purpose and the thrill of the unknown that awaited us on the horizon. As we sailed deeper into the Pacific, the atmosphere aboard the timber ship shifted dramatically with the arrival of a thick fog that enveloped us like a shroud. The once vibrant blue of the ocean faded into a ghostly gray, and visibility dwindled to mere feet. The crew's reactions were immediate and palpable. A tense silence fell over the deck as they exchanged wary glances, their usual banter replaced by an uneasy awareness of the eerie surroundings. Dmitri, the captain, stood at the helm, his brow furrowed as he peered into the murky depths of the fog, his instincts honed by years of experience telling him that something was amiss. The fog seemed to have a life of its own, swirling and shifting in unnatural patterns, as if it were a sentient being intent on concealing its secrets. The crew moved with a heightened sense of caution, their voices hushed as they navigated the deck, straining to hear the faintest sounds that might signal danger. Mikhail, usually brimming with energy, appeared subdued, his eyes darting nervously as he clutched the rigging. The palpable tension created an atmosphere thick with unease, and I could feel the weight of the fog pressing down on us, amplifying our fears and uncertainties. As the hours passed, strange occurrences began to manifest within the fog. Shadows danced just beyond the edges of our vision, fleeting glimpses of movement that sent chills down my spine. Whispers seemed to echo through the mist, indistinct yet haunting, as if the very air was alive with the voices of those lost to the depths. The crew exchanged nervous glances, their unease growing as they recounted tales of sailors who had vanished into the fog, never to return. The supernatural elements of the fog began to weave themselves into our reality, blurring the lines between the known and the unknown. With each passing moment, the fog thickened, wrapping the ship in an oppressive embrace that felt almost suffocating. I sensed a foreboding presence lurking just beyond our sight, a reminder of the dangers that lay hidden within the depths of the ocean. The fog was not merely a weather phenomenon, it was a harbinger of impending peril, a veil that concealed the threats lurking beneath the surface. The crew's tension escalated, their instincts screaming that we were not alone in this eerie expanse. As I stood at the bow, straining to see through the swirling mist, I felt a chill creep into my bones. The fog had transformed from a mere obstacle into a living entity, a reminder of the ocean's mysteries and the dangers that awaited us. I knew that we were sailing into uncharted territory, where the line between reality and the supernatural blurred, and the fog held secrets that could change the course of our journey forever. The impending danger loomed like a specter, and I braced myself for whatever lay ahead, knowing that the true test of our resolve was just beginning. The eerie stillness of the fog was shattered by a blood-curdling scream that echoed from below deck, a sound so raw and primal that it sent a jolt of terror through every member of the crew. The laughter and camaraderie that had filled the air moments before evaporated, replaced by a palpable panic that gripped us all. I stood frozen at the bow, my heart racing as the crew rushed toward the source of the scream, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. The atmosphere shifted from one of adventure to sheer chaos in an instant, as confusion reigned supreme.
"What was that?"
Mikhail shouted, his voice trembling as he glanced nervously at Dmitri, who had gone rigid at the helm. The captain's expression was a mix of concern and determination, but even he seemed momentarily at a loss for words. The crew gathered in a tight circle, their breaths coming in quick bursts as they exchanged frantic glances, each one grappling with the implications of what they had just heard. Some suggested we investigate immediately, while others urged caution, fearing that whatever had caused the scream might still be lurking below.
"Stay together,"
Dmitri barked, trying to assert control over the rising tide of panic.
"We need to assess the situation before rushing in."
His voice cut through the confusion, but the uncertainty hung heavy in the air. The crew was divided. Some were eager to confront the unknown, while others hesitated, their instincts warning them to tread carefully. The fog outside seemed to thicken, as if it were closing in on us, amplifying the sense of dread that had settled over the ship. As the debate raged on, I felt a chill creep down my spine. The screams had been filled with a terror that was unmistakable, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the brink of something horrific. The crew's differing opinions only heightened the tension, as fear began to fracture our unity. I could see the worry etched on their faces, the uncertainty of what lay ahead weighing heavily on their minds. Finally, Dmitri made the call. "We'll split into two groups. he decided, his voice steady despite the chaos. "One will stay on deck to keep watch, while the other will go below to investigate." The crew nodded, though I could see the fear in their eyes. As we prepared to descend into the darkness below, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The unfolding horror was about to challenge our survival in ways we could never have anticipated. With each step down the creaking stairs, I could hear the muffled sounds of the ocean above, a stark reminder of the world outside. But the deeper we went, the more the atmosphere shifted, thickening with an unshakable sense of dread. Whatever had caused that scream was waiting for us, lurking in the shadows, and I couldn't help but wonder if we were about to confront a nightmare that would test the very limits of our courage and resolve. The moment we realized one of our crew members had fallen overboard, chaos erupted on the timber ship. The fog, thick and suffocating, seemed to close in around us, amplifying the urgency of the situation. Dimitri shouted orders, his voice cutting through the panic as he directed the crew to grab ropes and life rings. I stood at the edge of the deck, my heart pounding in my chest, straining to see through the swirling mist where our shipmate had vanished. The ocean churned ominously, dark waves crashing against the hull, as if the very sea were conspiring against us.
"Get the lifebuoy!"
Mikhail yelled, his face pale with fear as he rushed to the side of the ship. The crew scrambled, their movements frantic as they worked to secure the ropes and prepare for the rescue. I could feel the tension in the air, a mix of desperation and dread, as we all understood the stakes. Each second felt like an eternity, and the weight of our helplessness bore down on us. The fog swallowed our cries, muffling the sounds of the ocean and leaving us in a haunting silence punctuated only by the splashes of water. As we leaned over the edge, peering into the murky depths, I felt a wave of emotional turmoil wash over me. The fear of losing a comrade gripped my heart, and I could see it mirrored in the faces of my fellow crew members. Some were shouting encouragement, while others were frozen in shock, their eyes wide with horror. The bond we had forged during our journey was now tested in the crucible of this crisis, and I could sense the unspoken fear that we might not be able to save him. Suddenly, a chilling silence enveloped us, and the water grew eerily still. It was as if the ocean itself held its breath, waiting. I felt a shiver run down my spine, an instinctual warning that something malevolent lurked beneath the surface. The crew's frantic shouts faded into whispers as we strained to listen, our hearts racing. Then, without warning, a dark shape surged beneath the water, a shadow that moved with unnatural speed.
"Look out!"
Dimitri shouted, but it was too late. The water erupted in a violent splash, and we all recoiled in horror as something monstrous broke the surface, its form twisting and writhing in a way that defied nature. Panic surged anew, and I felt a surge of adrenaline as we fought to keep our focus on our fallen comrade. The urgency of the rescue intensified, but the presence of that mysterious force loomed large, a reminder that we were not alone in our desperate attempt to save a life. With every passing moment, the stakes grew higher, and the emotional turmoil within us deepened. We were not just battling the elements, we were confronting an unseen terror that threatened to consume us all. As we prepared to launch the lifebuoy into the water, I could only hope that we would not only save our friend but also escape the clutches of whatever malevolent force lurked beneath the waves, waiting to claim us as its own. As the crew finally managed to pull the woman from the water, a collective gasp echoed across the deck. freezing us in place. She lay sprawled on the wooden planks, her body limp and drenched, the fog swirling around her like a shroud. The moment I laid eyes on her, a wave of horror washed over me. Her skin was pale, almost ghostly, and her clothes were tattered, clinging to her frame as if they had been torn apart by unseen claws. But it was her injuries that struck the deepest chord of fear within me. Deep gashes marred her arms and legs, jagged and raw, as if something had savagely ripped into her flesh. Blood mixed with seawater, creating a gruesome tableau that sent my stomach churning. The crew gathered around, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. Dimitri knelt beside her, his hands trembling as he assessed her condition.
Get the first aid kit.
He barked, but his voice was strained, betraying the fear that gripped him. I could see the uncertainty in his eyes, a flicker of doubt about whether we could save her. The atmosphere was thick with dread, and I could feel the weight of our collective fear pressing down on us like the fog that surrounded the ship. As the crew worked to stabilize her, whispers of speculation began to circulate.
What could have done this?
Mikhail murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. The woman's injuries were not just the result of an accident. They bore the marks of something far more sinister. The dynamic of hunter and prey loomed large in our minds, a chilling reminder that we were not merely victims of the ocean's whims but potential targets of a malevolent force lurking beneath the surface. The realization that something was hunting us sent shivers down my spine. I glanced at my fellow crew members, their faces pale and drawn, eyes wide with fear. The camaraderie we had built during our journey felt fragile in the face of this new reality. We were no longer just sailors on an adventure. We were prey in a game we didn't understand. The woman's presence on the deck was a grim reminder of the danger that surrounded us, a living testament to the horrors that could befall anyone who ventured too close to the unknown. As we worked to tend to her wounds, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that something unseen was observing us from the depths. The ocean, once a source of adventure and wonder, had transformed into a realm of terror, where the line between hunter and prey blurred. The fear that gripped us was palpable, a shared understanding that we were all inextricably linked by the threat that loomed just beneath the surface. In that moment, I realized that our survival depended not only on our ability to save the woman, but also on our capacity to confront the darkness that threatened to consume us all. As the hours dragged on, the atmosphere aboard the timber ship grew increasingly suffocating, thick with an overwhelming sense of hopelessness. The woman we had rescued lay unconscious, her injuries a grim reminder of the malevolent force lurking beneath the waves. Despite our best efforts to stabilize her, the crew's morale began to plummet, and the weight of despair settled heavily on our shoulders. Each passing moment felt like an eternity, and the fog that enveloped us seemed to seep into our very souls, amplifying our fears and uncertainties. The crew members, once united by a shared sense of adventure, now found themselves fractured by the escalating tension. Dimitri, who had always exuded confidence, appeared increasingly frazzled, his brow furrowed in worry as he paced the deck. "We need to get out of here," he muttered, glancing nervously at the swirling mist. His voice, usually steady and commanding, now trembled with doubt. The rational thought that had guided us through countless challenges began to erode, replaced by a primal fear that gripped us all. Whispers of superstition and old sailor tales crept into our conversations, as we speculated about the creature that had attacked the woman and what it might do next. Mikhail, once the embodiment of youthful enthusiasm, now wore a haunted expression. "What if it comes for us next?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The question hung in the air, a chilling reminder of our vulnerability. The conflict between rational thought and primal fear raged within each of us, as we struggled to maintain our composure in the face of the unknown. The ocean, once a vast expanse of adventure, had transformed into a dark abyss, and the fog felt like a suffocating blanket, closing in around us. As the situation worsened, the idea of sacrifice began to surface among the crew. In hushed tones, we discussed the possibility of leaving the woman behind, a desperate measure to save ourselves. The thought sent shivers down my spine, igniting a moral conflict that tore at my conscience. How could we abandon a fellow sailor in her time of need? Yet, the fear of becoming prey to whatever hunted us loomed larger than our sense of duty. Despair seeped into our hearts, and the notion of sacrifice became a haunting specter, whispering that survival might come at a terrible cost. The psychological breakdown of the crew was palpable, as fear escalated into a collective hysteria. Some began to lash out, blaming one another for our predicament, while others fell into silence, retreating into their own minds. The camaraderie that had once bound us together now felt fragile, as the bonds of trust frayed under the weight of our shared terror. In that moment, I realized that we were not just fighting against the darkness of the ocean, we were battling the darkness within ourselves. The fog, thick and oppressive, mirrored the turmoil in our hearts, and I feared that we were on the brink of losing not only our sanity but also our humanity in the face of the horrors that awaited us. The atmosphere aboard the timber ship shifted from tense to catastrophic in an instant. It began with a low rumble, a sound that reverberated through the hull and sent a shiver down my spine. The fog thickened, swirling ominously as if the ocean itself was preparing to unleash its fury. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, throwing us off balance. I stumbled against the railing, my heart racing as I grasped for something to steady myself. The crew erupted into chaos, shouts of alarm piercing the air as the vessel began to tear apart beneath us. Wood splintered and cracked, the sound echoing like thunder as the ship's structure buckled under the pressure of the unseen force lurking below. I could see the fear etched on the faces of my fellow crew members as they scrambled to regain their footing. Dmitri shouted orders, but his voice was drowned out by the cacophony of destruction. The deck tilted sharply, and I watched in horror as one of the crew members lost his grip and tumbled overboard, swallowed by the churning sea. Panic surged through me, a primal instinct to survive overriding any rational thought. As the ship continued to break apart, the struggle for survival intensified. I found myself clinging to a piece of debris, desperately trying to stay afloat amidst the chaos. The fog swirled around us, obscuring our vision and heightening our sense of dread. I could hear the frantic cries of my crewmates, their voices mingling with the roar of the ocean. Some were attempting to launch a lifeboat, while others fought to secure whatever supplies they could salvage. The sense of camaraderie that had once united us was now overshadowed by the instinctual drive to survive, and I could see the desperation in their eyes. In the midst of the turmoil, I caught a glimpse of Mikhail, his face pale and determined as he struggled to help another crew member who had fallen.
"We have to get to the lifeboat,"
he shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. I nodded, my heart pounding as I fought my way toward him. dodging falling debris and the rising water that threatened to engulf us. The ship was a sinking tomb, and we had to escape before it dragged us down with it. As we reached the lifeboat, I felt a surge of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by the realization that the true danger was still lurking beneath the surface. The water churned violently, and I could sense the malevolent presence that had haunted us since the fog descended. The final confrontation with the unknown loomed ahead, and I knew that whatever had claimed our ship was not finished with us yet. As we clambered into the lifeboat, I cast one last glance at the wreckage of our vessel, a haunting reminder of the horrors we had faced. The ocean stretched out before us, dark and foreboding, and I steeled myself for the battle that awaited us in the depths. Adrift in the vast expanse of the ocean, I felt the weight of isolation settle heavily upon me. The lifeboat, once a beacon of hope, now felt like a fragile cocoon, bobbing aimlessly on the undulating waves. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange hue over the water, but its warmth did little to alleviate the chill that seeped into my bones. Around me, the ocean stretched endlessly, a shimmering blanket of blue that seemed to mock my plight. I was utterly alone, the remnants of the shipwreck fading into the distance, swallowed by the relentless sea. As the hours turned into days, despair began to gnaw at my sanity. The vastness of the ocean was both beautiful and terrifying, a reminder of my insignificance in the face of nature's power. I found myself staring into the horizon, searching for any sign of land or rescue, but all I saw was an unbroken line of water meeting sky. The solitude was deafening, and I could feel my mind starting to unravel. Hallucinations crept in like shadows, blurring the lines between reality and imagination. I would catch glimpses of figures dancing on the waves, their laughter echoing in my ears, only to realize they were mere figments of my desperate mind. The ocean, once a source of adventure, had transformed into a prison, and I was its unwilling captive. With each passing day, the psychological effects of survival weighed heavily on me. I rationed my thoughts as carefully as I rationed the meager supplies left in the lifeboat. Memories of my crewmates haunted me, their faces flickering in my mind like candle flames, reminding me of the camaraderie we had shared. I could almost hear their voices, urging me to hold on, to keep fighting against the despair that threatened to consume me. Yet, the isolation was suffocating, and I often found myself talking to the ocean, pleading for a sign, for anything to break the silence that enveloped me. As I drifted, I couldn't shake the feeling that my ordeal was far from over. The ocean held secrets, and I sensed that something was still watching, lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to strike. The fear of the unknown gnawed at my resolve, but a flicker of hope remained buried deep within me. I clung to the belief that rescue would come, that I would not be left to the mercy of the waves forever. In the depths of my despair, I began to dream of the moment when I would be pulled from this watery abyss. I envisioned the faces of rescuers, their expressions a mix of relief and disbelief as they pulled me from the clutches of the ocean. But I also understood that such a rescue would come with its own implications. What would I tell them? How would I explain the horrors I had faced? The thought of returning to civilization filled me with both hope and dread, as I realized that the scars of this experience would linger long after I was saved. The ocean had changed me, and I knew that whatever lay ahead would be a journey not just of survival, but of reckoning with the darkness I had encountered in its depths. The moment of rescue came like a dream, a surreal blend of relief and disbelief. I had drifted for what felt like an eternity, the sun scorching my skin and the salt water stinging my eyes. When I finally spotted a vessel on the horizon, my heart raced as I waved my arms frantically, shouting hoarsely, desperate to be seen. The ship, a sturdy fishing trawler, drew closer, its crew peering over the side with expressions of shock and concern. As they pulled me aboard, I felt a rush of gratitude wash over me, but it was quickly overshadowed by the weight of my reality. Once on deck, I was enveloped in a flurry of activity. The crew wrapped me in blankets, offering water and food, but all I could think about was the emptiness that surrounded me. I was the sole survivor of the timber ship, the last remnant of a crew that had once been vibrant and full of life. The faces of my comrades flashed through my mind: Dmitri, Mikhail, and the others, each one a reminder of the camaraderie we had shared, now reduced to haunting memories. The contrast between my survival and their loss felt like a cruel twist of fate, a burden I struggled to comprehend. As the trawler sailed away from the site of the wreck, I found myself staring out at the endless ocean, a vast expanse that had once promised adventure but had instead delivered unimaginable horror. The emotional impact of being the sole survivor weighed heavily on my heart. I felt like a ghost, wandering through a world that had moved on without me. The laughter and camaraderie I had once cherished now felt like echoes from a distant past, and I grappled with the guilt of having lived when so many had perished. In the days that followed, as I recovered physically, the psychological scars began to surface. I was haunted by the memories of that fateful night, the screams, the chaos, the darkness that had enveloped us. I found myself reflecting on the experience, trying to make sense of the trauma that had unfolded. What had I done to deserve survival? Why had I been spared while my friends had been taken by the depths? These questions gnawed at me, and I realized that the journey ahead would not simply be about healing but also about confronting the shadows of my past. The ocean, once a symbol of freedom and adventure, had become a reminder of loss and despair. I knew that I would carry the weight of my comrades' memories with me, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the unpredictable nature of fate. As I looked out at the horizon, I felt a flicker of determination ignite within me. I would honor their memory by living fully, by embracing each moment as a gift. The experience had changed me irrevocably, and I was resolved to find a way to transform my pain into purpose, to ensure that their stories would not be forgotten in the depths of the ocean. I invite you to join me in exploring more stories of adventure, resilience, and the human spirit. If you found this narrative compelling, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content that delves into the depths of our shared experiences. Like and share this video with others who may find inspiration in the face of fear and uncertainty. Together, we can create a community that embraces the unknown, learns from our challenges, and celebrates the strength that lies within us all. Thank you for being part of this journey, and I look forward to sharing more adventures with you in the future.